happy to get this next guest on here. We haven't had him on all season, which is amazing to me. You've seen him a decent amount on the Sports Project, and spoiler alert, we'll see him on the Sports Project talking to me again. So sorry about that, Zach, because I'll be covering for Steve on Saturday. But I think already you've brought us some good luck. Ever since we even got you on the line, Zach, they backed them up, and now they're driving. So I like this timing. We needed you. This is clearly the missing piece. We needed you on the air for this final 6 minutes plus.
We need to get something going, because this has been a very tough watch in a game we should have easily been dominating right now.
It is tough to watch this team not really have their same kind of killer instinct to a degree, and some of that is, yes, they're missing some pieces and all that, but they used to be, last year they were very good at putting away teams that they were supposed to, and doing and being above the spread against the teams that were going to be a little bit tougher, and that's been a little bit hit or miss this year. They're still trying to stick with the running game. At least they've kept it close and kept it within a possession to keep that running game in play here.
Oh, for sure. In all things considering, it's the 5 turnovers, but somehow, some way, they're winning a touchdown to go in the lead, which just shows them the domination that we're having on defense, putting our offense in great situations right here. And that's the thing, is the way this team is built, they're not gonna just start abandoning the run. Yeah, the offensive line right now is tough to watch, with Decker being out, Sewell with his ailments, and Mahogany still getting back in, Tate being a rookie, and you got Kingsley Agukun, having a second start ever. So you're kind of like, it's the missing pieces, you can definitely be felt, but yeah, right now but hopefully they can start piecing it together and finish the season strong.
I think one underrated thing, too, that we really haven't been talking about enough with the offensive line piece of it, because when you talk about the injuries, automatically go to the defense. They're missing 3/4 of the starting secondary. There's a lot of pieces they're missing there. They had the Legion of Whom having to fill in there. I still love that nickname. I don't know. Right? I don't know who thought of it, but it's genius. But with the offense, they didn't have as many injuries, but now they're pooling on the offensive line and the tight ends, and those two things in concert, I think, are really hurting them, because I don't think we talked about the loss of Laporta enough. He was trending towards all-pro, Pro Bowl type season. He was really a key contributor for them. You could tell he was healthy again. He was developing as a blocker. Brock Wright was supplementing as a blocker. Losing both of those guys at the same time while they still had Zylstra out was a very tough loss, and you can tell, which is not really even a criticism. It's just kind of a certainty almost. You can tell with a lot of these guys that they had to pull off the street. They're not really familiar with the varied blocking assignments that come with a complicated offense like this. They don't always know where they're going because they haven't been a part of this team very long.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head with that. The loss of our 2 starting tight ends is probably not spoken enough about, because Brock and Laporta were both great blockers along that line, and when you got a team built as stout as they are, you're going to need those two. But you have Giovanni Ricci and Anthony Fursker, you're kind of like, okay, who are those guys? You're like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And it definitely be felt, and you could definitely see that the running game is not as potent as those two would be starting in the lineup. And even in the passing game, Laporta brings it's probably golf security blanket right on the underneath routes, and the threat of him as a receiver, you got to play to it just with his blocking abilities, and there's no real threat on the tight ends going out for the passes right now, and I think defenses can really tee up on that and just go head in and just stop the runs when they're in the game, because majority of the time they're going to be there blocking.
We all know that the points get kind of aggregated when you listen to a broadcast, especially since it's all national broadcast. It's not a local broadcast for the Lions unless you're listening to the radio. But it does seem like one of the main points that they're always making on the national broadcast is the lack of secondary targets beyond St. Brown and JMO. And Laporta was that. I mean, shoot, he was ranking above JMO as far as targets were trending, and as far as his importance, as you highlighted, Zach, with being the safety blanket over the middle, because it's changed. We talked about this a little bit because we were talking about Campbell's decision making and his aggression kind of being turned against him a little bit, how it's a little bit more predictable. That's the same thing when you've got an offense, when you have to throw on 3rd and 4th down, you pretty much know that ball is going St. Brown's way. When Laporta was in there, it was harder to know, because you could maybe have more room for JMO on a deep shot. If you want to take a shot, you've got Laporta and St. Brown running routes over the middle that hopefully are playing off of each other. So it was a lot harder to key in on one guy. They're able to do that a lot better this year, really at every phase, even in the running game to a degree, because Montgomery has been more muted in his usage. Yeah,
and I think that's probably been one of the bigger storylines going in, is the usage with Montgomery. Is typically what the numbers have shown, if Montgomery's rushing for a fair amount, then that means Goff is having a good game too with the passing, because now they're having to play more to the run instead of the passing, giving Goff a little bit more time. But it's unfortunate how almost one-dimensional the offense has gotten, and like you said, very predictable. Yeah, all you got to do is cover the two and have you have any sort of starting secondary. You can cover those two, and then have your front seven up front doing the run blocking, and it just feels very of a vanilla offense that we have not grown accustomed to seeing. We expect these explosive plays, and every now and again we get one, but that's a fortunate bit few far between, especially in recent weeks, where you're kind of like, we know this offense is better, but I don't know what the play calling or the execution part of it. It's definitely going to be something that they're definitely going to look back in the off season and hopefully get some answers for it.
I think one thing they've kind of lost, and some of it, this is game script and all the issues with the defense and all the injuries on the defense, but this was a phrase that was probably overused last year. I haven't heard it much this year because they really haven't been playing it so much, but along with grit, it feels like one of the other terms that was used all the time last year was complementary football, and they really haven't played a lot of complementary football this year, partially because it's harder to do that with the defense, with all the pieces missing, and trying to get the new coordinator in there, new scheme, all that. But it's about the position that you're putting yourself in as a team. You've got great special teams typically as well, with Dave Phipp at the helm, and really none of those units has played quite as well as last year. And some of it's personnel, some of it's probably adjusting to new coaching, at least on the offensive and defensive side. And that's definitely part of the offensive side, because the numbers are all up when Campbell's in there calling plays. He's clearly very capable, but you also have to think of the workload that's taking, that's putting on him, that could be allocated to other things too, because he's only one man, and I know he drinks eight, the equivalent of like 12 cups of coffee a day, but he's still only one man.
Yeah, that's the thing. His attention is not on the full team itself, and you want to say, is it because of that? Things are spread thin, and he's not able to bring attention the attention to all the players and their assignments, or is it to the point of his coaches? Are they not prepping for the players? Are they not getting them well well prepared for the games as well. So, and that's going to be something really looked at. And that's what kills me is the especially in the run defense. Our defensive line has been out of all the places that haven't been hit with injuries to defensive line, but somehow our run defense has really taken a step back. And you're like, okay, is that the defensive line coaching? Is that scheme with the defensive coordinator? And you're just some head scratching things, and okay. So something needs to happen, and the attention needs to go back to the assignments that are being put on the players, and some accountability, especially in the coaching as well.
That's a good point, especially because it's been well documented that the injuries that they've been having on the defense have been primarily in the secondary. The linebacking unit has been very healthy outside of Rodriguez. That's been a very strong unit as a whole. And the defensive line, they got McNeil back late, but it seems like after he's come back, that should have made that stronger. Tyleik Williams hopefully coming into form at that point in time. Then Davenport comes back. They get more reinforcements. Lopez has played pretty well in his time on the line. You've got Wheat on the outside that's played fairly well. You've got a lot of contributors, but somehow that's led to a step back. And weirdly, I do think it has to do with the secondary to a degree, because those run supporting defensive backs, primarily you're talking about Joseph. Sure, he's more the back safety, but you've got Branch and Arnold. You might want to have your criticisms of Arnold, but he was primarily pretty good in run support. Yes. And so it's been strange to see that even though they've been getting a stronger defensive line, it's really been weaker against the run game, and I do think the secondary has a big part to do with that.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, what Branch has been, the hard hitter, covering up the lanes in the run game and laying down some vicious blows. And like you said, for some reason, Tyrion has always got some sort of vendetta against them, and he was absolutely solid to start the season. And you can definitely see he took the corner from year one to year two in every aspect, and turning into that CB1 in the defense. But when you got backups playing in the secondary, Avonte Maddox, Thomas Harper, and now Jalen Mills playing out there because we lost someone to concussion earlier today. You're just unfortunately, there's going to be mistakes, and you were just hoping that maybe that stout front seven would pick it up. But it's just one of those things where you just kind of hope, wish, and a prayer that they figure it out. But it's just been, Jack Campbell's had been having a great season. Being named to the Pro Bowl for first year, and it's just almost feel like it's lackluster. At some point you're just like, man, he's having a great season, but it's the wins are not accumulating, especially on the defensive side, on the run defense and the short passing game.
This is one of the fascinating things to me about football in general, is it's such a complementary game. We're talking about complementary offense and defense and complementary football, but it's also within the units together. It's hard to sometimes identify the pieces that, okay, you're missing this piece and that's affecting the game this way. And that's kind of the conversation we're having. I want to come back with that conversation. We got to change our luck a little bit here, Zach, because they scored while we were on the phone. Looks like there was just another fumble. So we got to regroup here. We got to take a quick break, and we'll come back with Zack Moran and continue the conversation, and hopefully we can get some momentum back here. So you're listening to Shayne Graham's Extra Points on Jethro FM. Zach, our plan didn't work here with going to commercial. Maybe you saw what happened there, though. I saw the fumble, but it looked like it wasn't Goff down. Was it? I saw Van Ginkel tore it out of his hands. He wasn't down with possession before that.
Yeah, I'm trying to catch the replay myself as well. It looked like he was down with the ball, and Van Ginkel ripped it out of his hands while he was down. So I'm a little confused as to what's going on, but considering how this season has gone with officiating, not just with the Lions, but the league itself, it doesn't shock me one bit. The amount of confusion and amount of the inconsistency that comes with the refs, even on that Edison touchdown, it didn't even look like he crossed the plane. It looked like he went out of bounds with it, but maybe a little tip of the football got over the pylon. But it's almost to a point where you're just shaking your head and you're like, I don't know football anymore.
Well, yeah, we've been talking about that a decent amount on the show because I do try. I mean, like we've been talking about, a lot of this stuff, there's a lot of layers to it. And so to really get in depth and not misdiagnose what you're watching, there's a lot of different things that you have to look at. And unfortunately, I'm not a big anti-officiating person. I'm actually one that's primarily been in the camp of, hey, this is a disconnect between there's cognitive dissonance that happens here when you watch it on TV, because we get to see it on TV and we get all the angles and we get to slow it down and we get to see it afterwards. They see it one time on the field with all these massive human beings running around, running in front of them, all the sounds, all the lights, everything. But I agree with you, Zach. It has gotten to kind of a fever pitch where it's annoying me more so, not as somebody that covers the Lions and, hey, the Lions aren't getting the calls. It's more so it's affecting the game to too high of a degree when you have these athletes that are trying to hone their craft to get 1 second faster and 1 inch higher on their jump and whatever it is, but they're trying to get the best they can. We need to do the same thing with the referees as well. We need to give them the same platform to succeed and the same basis to succeed as the players, because they need to be at the top of their game as well, so that the game is fair and it can be left up to the players.
Oh, that's exactly it. Is that they're making critical calls at the worst possible time, affecting the outcomes of the games, leaving the sour taste in everyone's mouth. Like, this game shouldn't end on that particular note. This game should have been won or lost by the players and not by a ticky tack or a close call where you're just like, that could have gone either way, but you decided to call it now instead of previously before. And I think that's what it drives people up the wall, is that you make the call now, but they've been doing that all game. So you're kind of just sit there and you're just flabbergasted. And the amount of replay assists and camera angles and everything at this point, we shouldn't be. These calls shouldn't have been up to almost interpretation. We got everything they need to make that call, but somehow, some way, the lack of transparency, the league wants to go with it, wants to make it a behind the scenes game where you're just, please explain. If you gave us an explanation of what you saw, what you were thinking, maybe we can understand a little bit better. But because you don't give us that part, we always leave it to our interpretation, and majority of the time that's going to be solely against you because we have no idea what was going on behind the curtains.
That's a great point, and I'm sure you saw the tweet by Will Birchfield where he was talking about, he basically was joking about the pool report after the game a couple weeks ago, but a lot of people took that as reality. That's the crazy part, because it was like, well, this isn't that far away from what we could foresee happening. So like I had people come to me saying, "Oh, did you see this?" I'm like, "No, it was a tweet by a Lions writer," and so then he kind of confused people because he's not a parody account and he was doing kind of a parody thing there for that moment. But you can kind of relate to why he was doing it, because that wouldn't be that far-fetched compared to how they handle it. And the NFL historically is very reactive. It's very reactionary to into things like this. I mean, we could go into, not that I want to get dark with it, but you go into things like the Ray Rice situation where they had to wait till they had the footage. They had to wait till the footage got released, and then and then it went from a 2-game suspension, which is less than what you get for PEDs now, into a much deeper suspension. But it is very reactive, and it basically is usually based on public outcry and things like that, because of course they don't want the money to be affected, and that's the bottom line for them. So in a way, I'm glad there's so much discussion, because I'm hoping it will lead to something, because the way this is going, and odds are, the way things are looking right now, the Lions won't be in the playoffs, but in the playoffs, I could see something happening where that becomes the discussion more so than, hey, these key matchups in the NFL playoffs, let's watch them. If it becomes more about the officiating in the playoffs, I think that's going to be another omen for the NFL to do something about it here.
Oh, absolutely. And that's the thing. You want to come to that point. You don't want an NFL playoff game, or heaven forbid the Super Bowl, be decided on such a close call where you're just like, you decide to call that now. You want it almost feel like you want the spotlight now because of X, Y, and Z, and you're just like, well, I think it was last year. I think it was last year's Super Bowl where the game was ultimately decided at the end by a I don't know, last year or a couple of years ago, where it was decided by a penalty, and they ran out the clock, and you're just like, no, it was a good game until that point. Great, thanks guys, appreciate that one. And then, if I remember right, the CBA for the Refs Association is up for this year. So I think there's got a lot of questions and a lot of discussions to happen to maybe start deciding to bring in full-time refs instead of part-time guys, and make this their job. Make them accountable for the calls. Make them, they get accountable. They either get the best games or the not off games where there's not going to be much viewership. But at some point, the refs need to be held accountable for the calls or lack of calls or their discussions or anything to that nature, because it's an epidemic in this league, I'm sorry to say, this year.
Well, and you hit the nail on the head. We talked about that on a previous show, I think one of last week's shows, because we mentioned the fact that they are not full-time, and a lot of people were surprised to even learn that, because it is kind of a surprising fact. If you don't know it, you would just assume that these guys are full-time. Like, you've got all this money invested in this league. There's a lot of dollars that depend on it, especially with gambling money being involved now and everything that's involved. It's quite the business model. And to have basically your lawmakers, your people that are keeping everybody on the right side of things, having them not be full time is just kind of crazy. I mean, it's kind of wild to even think about it, because I compared it to being a teacher. It's like, okay, teachers, people, I have a bunch of friends that are teachers, and people that aren't teachers make a big deal. Well, they have summers off, they have 3 months off. It doesn't end up being 3 months off. Any of us that have a teacher in our lives know that they work after the semester's over, the year's over. They work before the year begins, and they have a lot of continued education during the summer. That's what the referees need. They need to be training in the off season, and like you said, get to their peak ability, so that these games, if they do hinge on them, it will be the correct call, and we know we can lean on these guys.
Yeah, absolutely. These guys should be consistently looking at film, looking at the rules, and doing eons of film review and practice with it, because as big of a product as the NFL is, I know they want to create chaos and controversy, and because guess what, it's still news. They're still being talked about. So the old saying goes, bad publicity is still publicity. So they're still getting their product in the face is just not in the right light. But what do they care? We're still watching. They're still getting the viewership. I mean, I don't know how the Netflix viewership is going this year, but adds up the wazoo on this one. But either way, it's just and I think a lot of the fan bases, not just with Detroit, it has definitely noticed something going amiss with the league and how they're handling the refs and the calls and everything, because the most inopportune times come in, and at this point, I think we just need to get some consistent refs in the league full time. And I think that would solve a lot of issues that's plaguing this league right now.
Exactly. Like you said, they have more technology than ever. They have more knowledge than ever. They just have to leverage that accordingly with full-time folks. So hopefully they're able to do that here. But yeah, unfortunately, this game has not turned with you on here, Zach. It looks like they're headed towards being officially eliminated from the playoffs. I do like to see how much Tesla has been involved here late in the season, because that's one thing that you can at least do with these games that are not meaning as much because they're not going to make the playoffs. You are trying out these young offensive linemen, tight ends that maybe can be depth pieces next year, seeing what you have on the defense, because they did retain some guys. We got to keep in mind from last year, they retained some guys that were valuable pieces that they had to put out there because Hutchinson was hurt and other people were hurt. They got Al-Qadim Muhammad as part of that. And hopefully there's some good things that come out of that this year with maybe guys like Frazier and Egukon and other folks that they're having to try out. Tesla should get more looks down the stretch, because I feel like that's where our heads have to go naturally. We used to do this very early in the season with the old Lions, where it would be about week 6 and we'd be going, okay, well, so who's number one on the draft board next year? And it's not quite that dire. They're right about 500. They've got a lot of pieces to put together and to look forward to here. But that is one thing to be watching as the year concludes, is they'll have a lot of young guys that will probably get some more looks as a result of being eliminated from the playoffs here.
Oh, for sure. And I'll be. I know, knowing how Campbell runs the team, the starters are probably going to still play. They will, even though the Bears have already made the playoffs, they can still try to spoil them depending on how the Packers game goes. But yeah, this is a time to see what you have, is see what needs to be very. It's managed over, like I said, test the other offensive linemen and Miles Frazier and Kingsley to see if potentially he's the future at center, because they desperately need someone at center. Unfortunately, Glasgow was thrown into a position that he was not ready for with the Ragnow retirement. He tried to come back, but it's. With a hamstring issue, that was a short-lived pipe dream, and we're gonna be drafting, in probably in the mids between 16 to 18 roughly. So depending how the draft goes, we can see if we can get a little bit of immersion in talent. Safety is going to be looked at because we have no. Branch is going to be out till almost, unfortunately, probably this time next season, and we don't know how Kirby's knee is with his, what issues are going with that. If he's going to be able to keep playing, it's going to be interesting how they attack this offseason, because they've been more on the conservative approach, bringing in depth guys and relying on their guys that they drafted, or players that have been in that system for a while now. And I think Campbell and Holmes are going to look real hard in that mirror. I think they're going to realize that some drastic measures need to be taken on their approach and how building this team. And And I think they need to be really aggressive in free agency. I know we got a bunch of contracts coming because we signed a lot of extensions, but money can always be moved around, and see if we can get some of that top talent in Detroit next season, because the team still has a strong core with it.
Exactly. There's still a lot of reason for hope. I think I don't think you can blame them too much with trying to depend on a culture that produced a 15-2 record last year under difficult circumstances with all those injuries. It didn't break their way thus far this year, but they've got a lot of pieces for next year and a lot to build on. I think I'm seeing a lot of, it's almost like PTSD to a degree. If I hadn't named the shows what I have, I wanted to kind of incorporate PTSD but turn it into something with Detroit, because that's what a lot of Lions fans have, because they go to the same old Lions, and
yep.
I think this is a good time to remind people that this isn't exactly the same old Lions. A team that's 8-8 with this many injuries, with this difficult of a schedule, they've still got the culture. They've got a good coach. They've got a good general manager. They've got a good system overall. They need to make some tweaks, and I think there will be more of an overhaul, like you said, Zach, in the offseason, because we could see some of the guys that were part of this rebuild. You could see them say, okay, maybe it's time to move on from Anzalone and move Barnes inside, or there's been a lot of talk about Montgomery. I haven't been as big of a fan of that, but the pay is now out of slot for him, considering his usage. That's not his fault. I still think he's got the talent, but he's being paid like a top 12 running back, and he's not really getting top 12 running back reps because of Gibbs, but that's a good problem to have. You've got a lot of the young talent that's coming on or coming back, hopefully to Slough with a full season under his belt. Arnold comes back healthy. A lot of the other guys that we're talking about that are hurt. There's a lot of reason to be hopeful. I don't think we can do same old Lions with an 8-8 team that has this sort of infrastructure.
No, absolutely not. And unfortunately, that's the narrative is, well, a lot of people are gonna build on. But if anyone who knows this team knows that this did not go the way they hoped this season. There was Super Bowl aspirations, especially after last season. And yeah, we lost a few players, but in all intents and purposes, we still had the same team, and just we're like, okay, let's just put it all together and let's try it again. And that's that. And I think that's the things people realize during the NFL is it winning any game is tough in itself. And when things don't go according to plan, like the offensive coordinator situation that happened with the play calling, the amount of injuries in one particular position group, I think the chemistry along the offensive line, but that's any Lions fan today will hopefully be patient with it and just run with how this team's going to be ran. I think a lot of people still have trust in the front office. I think there's going to be a lot of tough decisions that are going to be made because this can't happen again next season. Everyone says, "Oh, the window is shrinking." I'm like, let's just hang tight before we shut it all the way. Is give them time, let them have this bad taste in their mouth. Let them experience what it is of almost failed expectations for this year, and see what they can do and turn around next season.